City Council to order, November 18th, 2025. May we have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Chavez?
Here.
Councilmember Chen?
Here.
Councilmember Yu?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Mann?
Here.
Mayor Sternquist?
Here. Okay. We have Pastor Kelty here from Community of Christ Church, and he will provide the invocation. Thank you, Pastor, for coming. If you would please stand and join us in the prayer.
O our Creator God, it is with the deepest sense of joy yet seriousness as we gather here today. With joy because we live in this nation and this city where we're allowed to be here this day, to speak freely, to share our thoughts, to discuss the future of this community and this nation. But with us all serious, O Creator, for those same reasons. So may we always be in your presence. We might learn from you to build a better city, to do those things that are necessary to indeed to make us joyful, yet in a serious nature, that indeed what we do here today will have a positive and great effect to bring about a better community. This we invoke in thy Son, in thy name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Put your right hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We have no ceremonial items this evening. We move to item 6, public comments on items not listed on the agenda. The City Council will now hear those. Is there anyone who would like to speak? Nope. Okay, I'm going to close public comment. We move to item 7, the consent calendar. All consent calendar items may be approved in a single motion as recommended unless removed for further discussion.
Motion to approve. Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. May we have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Chavez?
Yes.
Councilmember Chen?
Yes.
Councilmember Yu?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mann?
Yes.
Mayor Sternquist?
Yes. Okay, we move to item 8, public hearing, an ordinance amending Title VII Building Regulations of the Temple City Municipal Code to adopt by reference the 2025 California Building, Residential, Electrical, Mechanical, Plumbing, Energy, Historical Building, Existing Building, and Green Building Standard Codes with certain amendments, additions, and deletions. Brian?
Thank you, Mayor Sternquist and members of the council. While this is on the public, while this is filed as a public hearing, we're not going to exercise this as a public hearing tonight. Mr. Reimers will explain why and the steps we're going to take regarding this for one step in your consideration tonight.
So this ordinance is different than most ordinances we adopt. Most ordinances, we have the full ordinance before you. When we adopt an ordinance by reference, there's a different process in the government code. So in this process, we will be setting the date for the public hearing. That gives the public full knowledge. And so that's the point in which we're proposing to do the presentation to you. So that'll be in 2 weeks on December 2nd. So the recommendation before you tonight is to introduce for first reading by title only the ordinance, and then go ahead and set the public hearing for December 2nd, and that's when we'll give you the full report.
Okay. Do we have any questions?
No, I don't.
Well, I was just procedurally, I find it kind of interesting that we do a first reading without discussion.
It is interesting. As Mr. Reimers said, the government code specifically provides for this for adoption by reference. And it's something that comes up in most cities every few years, and then we all forget about it in between. And then comes time for the building codes again, and we've got to dance through the process again.
I certainly don't remember
I think
doing
we've done this before. I
Okay.
recall 1 or 2 occasions when we've done it by reference, yeah.
Okay.
Anyone
Thank you
else?
for the
on
question,
this?
sir.
Okay, I'm going to open the public hearing. Anyone in the audience want to speak on this? Close public hearing. Any final questions, comments? May I have a motion, please?
I would move that we introduce for first reading by title only and waive further reading of ordinance number 25-1085, adopting by reference to 2025 California building, residential, electrical, mechanical, plumbing, energy, historical building, existing building, and green building standards and codes, and that we schedule a public hearing on December 2nd, 2025, to consider adoption and second reading of ordinance number 25-1085.
Second?
Okay. May I get a roll call, please?
Councilmember Chavez?
Yes.
Councilmember Chen?
Yes.
Councilmember Yu?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Man?
Yes.
Mayor Sternquist?
Yes. Okay. We move to
Can
item
you go,
9. There's no
Mayor, I
one.
think we
I'm
need
sorry,
to.
Mayor.
Oh, I'm sorry.
May I read the title?
Oh, yes, you may.
Thank you. Ordinance number 25-1085, an ordinance of the City of Temple City amending Title 7 Building Regulations of the Temple City Municipal Code to adopt by reference the 2025 California Building Residential, Electrical, Mechanical, Plumbing, Energy, Historical Building, Existing Building, and Green Building Standard Codes with certain amendments, additions, and deletions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Peggy. Move to item 9, unfinished business. There's none. New business. Consideration of adoption of election resolution submitting to the voters at the March 3rd, 2026 general municipal election, a ballot measure establishing a 3/4 cent, 0.75% per dollar general transactions and use sales tax, providing direction for an impartial analysis, ballot arguments and rebuttals for the measure, and further conducting the first reading of a proposed ordinance establishing the aforementioned transactions and use sales tax. Brian?
Thank you, Mayor. That is a hefty council title, so thank you for getting through that. Thank you, Mayor and Council, and for members of the public that are here. Tonight, for Council's consideration, we will discuss a proposed sales tax measure titled the Temple City Public Safety Roads and City Services Measure. So tonight, as an overview of the presentation for hopefully a little less than 10 to 15 minutes, we'll go over some of the challenges that we have in funding infrastructure. Some of the challenges that we as the city have in rising costs of public safety. How the city essentially allocates its funding to meet those challenges now, some of the challenges that we have ahead, especially the challenges that we have in funding and maintaining infrastructure investment. And then I'll talk a little bit about how the current sales tax structure is broken down, and then how a proposed sales tax structure is broken down. On the infrastructure standpoint, you as the council have made some substantial investments in the community. Our roads, which comprise about 71 miles of roads, alleyways, arterials, collector, and residential streets, are up to a C rating. And I'll talk a little bit about what that C rating means and what we want to get to as a B rating, and why we don't want us to necessarily be a student in this case. We have a very robust community center. We have 3 existing parks, Live Oak Park, Primrose Park, and Temple City Park. Live Oak Park in particular is used constantly. The intensity of its use from sports leagues to general recreational use to our new outstanding new playground is intensely used. On the sewer and water systems front, stormwater front, we take care of the laterals. Our colleagues at the county sanitation district take care of the main lines, but the stormwater compliance issues are a constant challenge for the city. Myself and Andrew Cohen from the Community Development Department monitor and help, and along with our consultants, John Hunter and Associates, we are dealing with ongoing struggles and challenges with that. We take care of all the street signals in the city as well. So everything that people essentially feel, touch, get through the city, how they get through the city, how they recreate in the city, what they do to live their lives every day from an infrastructure standpoint, we do take care of. And I like to call our crew a small but mighty crew that are maintenance yard. They do an outstanding job. They are multi-talented, have a lot of skills. And, but we have to maintain one, and it is costly to maintain one, both from a compliance standpoint, from OSHA standpoint, and the team does a really good job on that front, but also too, just the types of equipment we have to use, in which we've been purchasing, and you've given us the funding to purchase a lot of new equipment in the last few years. To kind of just reiterate on the maintenance, on the infrastructure maintenance front, while the city was founded in 1923, but formally incorporated in 1960, a lot of the layout of the city was already established. So when you think of that, the layout of the city was established, but also too, how that city was constructed going forward has changed. How land use issues have changed, both those land use issues that have been forced upon the city and just the organic growth of the city over time. So that has put a level of stress on the city's infrastructure, both with its, think of it, sewer and water, which our private water purveyors and our mutuals provide that water service, but on our roads. Recently, we, as the council knows, we do an independent engineer's review of our streets. And our residential streets received a C rating. So think of it, 0 to 100, 100 being you're the star student, 0, you're the dunce in the corner. We are at a C rating. What we really want to get to is, what that means is there's still a good portion of residential roads that are either in poor and very poor condition. Where do we want to get to? We want to get to a B rating. Why not an A? An A would mean that we are constantly maintaining our streets at almost a near perfect condition. What we're looking for is for our streets to be structurally sound, the amount of, not any potholes, you see what's called fracturing and other elements, but the drivability and the safety of the roads are intact. That's why you want to be at a B rating. So for us to get to a B rating right now, if we look across the board between our arterials and our residential streets, we're going to have to spend about $20 to $30 million to get to that level. A little about of that portion, about 12 to 15 will be what we need on the residential side going forward. One of our other challenges on the infrastructure side is we've made some investments, and the council has given us the funding to make those investments back into our municipal facilities, including this one, with a new roof and a new HVAC system. But things like our Live Oak Park building and others are challenged, and they're getting to the point of where we have to make some major investments in those facilities for their useful life to be extended. The roof alone and the HVAC system here alone extended the useful life of these two buildings for at least a couple decades. As council member, you can attest to as well in his job day to day, ground up construction is extremely expensive and extremely challenging. And that is why we did not choose to do any ground up construction on the Civic Center site. Another thing we have a challenge with, and again, credit to the council, the cost of public safety has continued to grow. You give me the opportunity to sit on the county's liability trust fund. About 15 years ago, the surcharge for liability costs, meaning the percentage, essentially an insurance payment we make in order to have the sheriffs patrol the city and everything else, that surcharge stood at 3% about 15 years ago. Today, it's 12.5%. So for every $1 million we spend on a contract, 15 years ago, we were spending $30,000 for that insurance policy. Today, we're spending $125,000. To the point of the council still finding ways to maintain a level of service to the community while costs escalating higher, we have maintained that level of service going forward. One of the other things that you authorized us to do most recently is add a non-sworn community service officers to supplement our law enforcement services. Those, we just went out most recently for that recruitment process, and hopefully come early 2026, we will have folks on the street as community services officer, non-sworn, assisting our LASD partners. Just briefly on the fire and emergency service, there's not a direct cost, but it's interesting though, the fact that our property tax bills for those who own property in the city, you'll see a line item for the LA County Consolidated Fire District. That pays for fire services, so we don't pay for it directly out of general fund, but that service, generally speaking, is a emergency medical service, EMS. 75% of the calls are for that. We are also lucky on the public safety side that we have Temple Station for the Sheriff's Department is within the city boundaries, and we have a fire station right next door to us. Not every contract city has the luxury of those two assets being within their community. You're very familiar with how our expenditures are broken down. Our taxes pay for a good portion, are a good portion of our revenues. And then subvention funds, meaning things like the state's vehicle license fee and everything else. We invest our money wisely. That number of 4% or $752,000 a use of money, think of that as interest accrued on our reserves. That's going to be a little bit higher come next year as well. And we do not try to burden the community with charges for services. So it is not one where we are dependent on the community or others to pay for the services in the community. We look for our general tax base to provide that revenue source going forward to provide the expenditures that are broken down on the right-hand side. And as in most communities, our largest expenditures are public safety and community services. The safety of the community and how the community has a vibrant place with open spaces and recreation in order to make it a community that's worthwhile. We don't spend a lot of money on, we spend a good chunk of change on the public works side and also too on our community development side, because our land use, our code enforcement efforts, and also to help create the desirability of what the community wants as reflected in our general plan, our zoning code, our building codes, and creating the desirable community that you're looking for and that what the community has expressed through the general plan process many years ago and what the planning commission, and then sometimes even what you do if a project application comes up to the level of the council. So we are not in fiscal distress, but we have fiscal challenges. The council made a very strategic decision during the COVID time when one-time $8 million from the American Rescue Plan was given to us. The council was very adamant and saying we cannot build that into our operating cost. We must reinvest that in one-time capital expenditures. And we did that. The ARPA funding helped, which we were legally allowed to do, backfilled our law enforcement costs for 2 fiscal years, and what that allowed the council then to do was to fund things like the Live Oak Playground project, the new roof and HVAC system at City Hall, purchasing property for the new park in 50003 Sereno. And that was one-time funding that we wouldn't have had otherwise in order to do those projects. One of the challenges we have is that while we have gotten to a C rating with our roads, we do not, as a city, have sufficient funding to continue the pace of road repair that we have delivered over the next 5 years. So what does that mean? We will be extremely challenged to keep that C rating going forward with the revenue sources that we have today. We would need other revenue sources in order for that C rating to move up to a B, and then most importantly, to maintain that B over time.
Brian?
Yes, ma'am.
How quickly would that C rating deteriorate?
That is a great question, and it would take, I would say, if we made the same level of investment, and Michael Lloyd, who's our city engineer, can help me with this as well. It would take about a 5 to 10 year period to start to see that degradate if you made really no investment. But I'll let Michael, if you don't mind, I'll let Michael touch upon that. Mayor.
And Brian hit on it. So I would estimate you have about a 5 to 10 year window if invested on average about 1.5 million, you would definitely see degradation from what I would call a C to a low C to obviously a high D in that
Okay.
5 to 10 year window.
That
And-
goes by fast.
Correct.
And when we don't maintain, and so to add, so as a layman and not an engineer, the quicker once you get to that C minus level, you're spending more on certain roads that need either complete, so think of it like ensuring that your foundation is strong and then your roof is strong. If you say, hey, I'm just gonna leave the roof alone for another decade, it's gonna get more expensive, there's gonna be more wood rot, there's gonna be other things that are gonna make other things that you don't see, in this case, the sub-base of the road, a lot more difficult to do. And we've been really strategic about that, just to not go into too much detail, but when we did Las Tunas during COVID, we made a strategic decision, and Mr. Kair made a strategic decision at the time, and I've talked to Michael, and he would have made the same decision as well, to really do what is called localized, really R&R, or complete reconstruction. Because if we had to completely reconstruct that road, we wouldn't have been able to afford to do it. We would have wiped out all of our funds for roads for at least a decade to come. So we've made some very strategic investments that way. So to answer your point, Mayor Sternquist, it will come, and then it will come precipitously. It's almost like it'll be almost like once you hit a tipping point, it'll hit exponentially downward rather than exponentially. It'll hit exponentially downward once you hit a certain tipping point. Now, is that 7 years from now or 6 years from now? I couldn't tell you, but the range is what we can kind of give you as an idea. Does that help?
Yeah, it's not going to stay stable.
It doesn't stay stable.
Mayor, may I add a
Yes.
a follow-up question to that? So.
Yes, sir.
So maybe that's better addressed direct to the city engineer. So what happens, what does that mean in terms of road safety, in terms of comfort driving? And what is that, when we go to the low Cs and Ds, what does that really mean? What will people experience?
Sure. So moving to the low Cs, high Ds definitely.
Right.
So from the low 70s into the high 60s as a city average, we're talking averages, you would see substantially more potholes. So there's that maintenance effort to get out there and fill the potholes as quickly as we can without getting out there the same day. You know, that poses some liability to the city, obviously. So there's that concern. And then just the condition of the pavement, it's not going to be that smooth riding surface that we're slowly improving upon, that we've seen those improvements over the past 5 years. So that's a loss as well. So you're going to have a bumpier road with much more potholes is what I would project if the investment's not made.
This is a follow-up to Vince's question. I believe that when we first got on council,
Right.
we looked at these issues, of course, and if I'm correct, I think we were skirting that C minus D in many of the areas of the city. And so we have made some improvement, some inroads into it. Not to use that term lightly, but so I think we're aware, or some of us can remember when we were at that stage. But I think now we have improved, but now I think the idea is that we need, there's still room for more improvement, and we can't just keep going the rate we're going, because at some point, it's just gonna fall back to where we were before, so. Yeah, because I remember we looked at that, and I remember, this is the first time I became aware of these A, B, C grades, so to speak, and to remember, and I remember the thinking back then was, well, let's fix the good roads first,
Yeah.
and let the
Low-hanging
bad
fruit,
roads
yeah.
go. And I always thought that was kind of a backwards thing, but we
Yeah,
seem to move
low-hanging
away
fruit,
from
yeah.
that a little bit in our thinking. And I don't want to digress, but I know in my conversations with Brian, that seems to be a thing in the past. We're kind of looking at a different idea now.
We got to a different stage with
Yeah.
that, and not to belabor that point, but we got to a place where we were able to do that.
Yeah.
But the reason we were able to do that is because we had the funding to do that. So we had the funding going forward to do that. So but yeah, the general concept is understood,
Yeah,
Councilmember Chavez.
Thank you.
So our cost of our sheriff's contract, or sorry, so the road repair, we just don't have enough going forward to keep the pace we've been going at in 5 years and to maintain and not just have an aspirational goal, but have a operational and long-term sustainable infrastructure goal of going to a B. Contract costs for sheriffs escalate. They do a fantastic job. Deputy Bowie, our team do a fantastic job. It has nothing to do, nor criticism of them or the LA County Sheriff's Department. It is just a cost that escalates and continues to escalate. So what does that mean for us? We've been able to have robust surpluses that have funded many of the one-time projects and other things that we've been able to do for many years. Based on a fully built out, meaning realizing all the expenditures and realizing all the revenues and all the expenditures going forward, we're going to see minimal to very small surpluses going forward. What does that mean? We will not be able to put money into reserves to be in a position to fund things like Live Oak Park Playground project. When we had the matching funding to do other projects like the library many years ago, we still won't be able to do that because those reserves have been the primary source, not only from a cash flow perspective, which is important, but also too just from having cash on hand to be able to match funds and finance projects going forward. So just a couple things about us as a city and you as the council. We're a contract city and we have a lean and mean staff. We have a staff that, and that's the way a contract city model is built. Have a talented staff that can do a lot of things, but the contract city model kind of ensures that you have the balance of services in a way that can be delivered in a long-term financial sustainable manner. So what does that mean too? We keep about 90 to 110% in reserves. So many people say, well, that's a high level, but that level also allows us not to do any debt service financing. It has allowed us to have cash flow consistent and throughout the years to be able not be any cash crunch when we're doing big projects. Which means we're debt-free. So we've been doing all of this effort for the last 15 years or so, and since this council has been comprised as well, debt-free, not financing these things. We've been doing, think of it as pay-as-you-go. We've been balanced operating budgets with surpluses, with the one exception of COVID, where we did have we were about $1 million in a deficit that year. One of the things the council is consistently pressing upon us is go out and get other people's money. And so we go out and get other people's money. And credit to staff, credit to our parks department, our community development right now with the review of the relook at the Crossroads specific plan. Got $300,000 to do that, to relook at it. We are actively looking at outside funding for our 2 new parks as well. We have the planning money for both of those parks, so that we've been really aggressive on that front.
Can I ask a quick question on that?
Sure, sir.
Would it be fair to say that the grant opportunities are becoming fewer and fewer, or have they kind of plateaued? Or where do you guys see that coming up in the next few years?
That's a good
Is there
question.
any way to predict that or have any kind of
I don't know if I
knowledge
can.
about that?
I don't know if I can honestly predict that, Councilmember Chavez, but it is more competitive and it is more challenging and it is limited in scope. So, like, one of the reasons we've been fortunate with the parks is because when we did the county park assessment 10 years ago, we were deemed a park poor city. That opened up the opportunity for our partners with the county to give us the grants, and also the state of California to recognize us for those needs, and that's why I've been able to get those grants.
And are these for the more or less state grants or federal grants, or how?
Combination. The federal grants have been extremely limited. It's been mostly our partners at the county through Measure A for the parks grants, and the state as well, is the two primary sources. But again, they are limited in scope and very targeted, and we've had some very specific circumstances in why we've been able to get that funding. I would also say on our planning front as well, we've been known as very aggressive, and I mean that in the most positive sense. Aggressive but strategic in what we look for in our planning grants, so that's why we're going to be able to get some of that funding as well, which you would have to build into your operating budget otherwise. So,
And I think this goes without saying that whatever happens moving forward, I trust that staff will continue looking for those and do whatever they can. And, they've done a great job so far. I don't see any reason for them to stop.
I would concur, they have done a great job, and it's due to their efforts that, that we have been able to secure these grants going forward.
Good.
So what would the proposed measure be? Let's get down to brass tacks. A 3/4 cent sales tax would require voter approval if it's on the general tax, as a general tax of 50% plus one, so 50% of the voters plus one voter. If it is placed on the March 2026 election ballot, revenue would not be seen. It takes about 110 days for once the vote is passed. That's why tonight you have a first reading, but we would wait for that second reading to see the results of whenever the election occurred and if there was passage. And then what that does, it starts the shot clock with the state to enact that tax and start collecting that tax with all of the ratepayers here in Temple City.
So that could take, what, 3 months or so?
A little bit more than that. Think about 120 days, 130 days total from the time that the election is, whatever the election is held, to that time for going forward. Just a couple more things about about where we're at. So the city only keeps a fraction of the property tax and the sales tax that's collected in the city. On the property tax side, of every dollar that is collected, we only receive between the landscape and lighting district and our general fund roughly about a little less than 9 cents or 9 cents on the dollar. The rest goes to a bunch of different agencies. It's a little different on the sales tax front. On the sales tax, this is how it's broken down now. Of the 9.75 that's collected in the city right now, 6% of that goes to the state of California, so the big chunk of it goes there. LA County, through several measures, which I'll go over briefly, goes to the county. Some of that does come back to the city, but the total proportion of what is collected and derived from the city does not come back one for one here to from the county to the city. And then we get the whole 1%. That is the Bradley Burns in state law constitutionally protected 1% that comes to the city. I'll talk about the constitutionally protected element in just a minute. If we went to 3/4% going up to 10.5, this is how the breakdown would go. State would say the same, county would say the same, we'd go to 1.75. One of the concerns that we've always had is that 0.75, if another regional entity, either the state or the county or a regional entity that is governed by, that governs the city, could come in and pass a tax. And if they were to do that, that would go to that agency. We would not see that. And the statewide sales tax rate is capped statewide with different jurisdictions have different caps, but our cap is where it's at, and we would not be able to go above that cap.
Mayor, may I ask a question? Mr. Cook, can you give some examples of some of these region-wide agencies that have been and likely would propose some new tax measures? And give us some examples of.
Well, certainly, Councilmember Ryu, and I'll show you just in a minute one of them. Here's the county's breakdown. So a lot of these, a small portion of this funding comes back, but I would point to measure H and A, where we do not get one single direct dollar. I mean, we will get a small portion, of measure A, but not all of this comes back one-to-one for the city. There is only a portion of that funding that actually comes back to the city. So it is challenging. The other agencies that could do something like this to slice up that more of that 0.75 of the pie could be something like AQMD, or just the state of California itself, or other regional entities that could come in and pass a regional tax that would hit the cap.
That's my question. What other ones are you talking about?
Uh,
Such as, I mean, not that they are,
So the county,
like
state,
fire,
AQMD.
fire district, flood control.
Others could try to pass those types of taxes, so there's various other regional, that the county regional entities too,
Right.
that theoretically could come in and ask for those taxes. While they haven't, they have the ability to, and the concern is that they could come in and whatever regional issue is they're trying to deal with, they could try to tax the whole region, and would include us. So things like that, things like those entities, as you're pointing out, Councilmember you.
I have a quick question while we're on this topic. For the county Measure A, wasn't there something that the state legislature passed that would allow that bump to exceed the state cap, or was that something else?
Yes. Yes, there was.
Was it only for Measure A, or is that for,
It was originally for Measure H, and then it was extended out for Measure A, and it was to allow Los Angeles County specifically to fund homeless services without affecting the underlying cap as between the county and the various cities.
so it was state legislature but specific to LA County?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So one concern that always kind of comes up is, well, people can go elsewhere if I have a sales tax rate that's lower. Well, here is a survey of our not all of the San Gabriel Valley cities, but 50 cities of the 88 cities in LA County charge a higher rate. And this is a sampling of our surrounding cities. One thing that's important to note for the council to just be reminded about as well is that sales tax exempts most groceries, prescription drugs, residential rent, CalFresh purchases, professional services, and utilities. So that's just something important to note compared to a specific like a utility user's tax or other property tax measures as well. So, yes, sir.
Mayor, I believe, you talk about surrounding city, I don't see Arcadia on there. I believe Arcadia is.
That one is, sorry, that one is missing, sir, and they are,
And
I
a
believe they
quarter.
are at the 10.5% rate as well.
yeah.
Either 10.25 or 10.5.
Almonte's had theirs
Yeah.
at the highest for quite some time.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you really can't go around and try to, escape that. There's really not a whole lot of areas without a higher sales tax.
No.
Yeah.
So here's some of the impacts. Again, so if approved by the voters, if it is put on into election, approved by the voters, it would bring us approximately $2.5 million annually. And we try to be conservative with our estimates, try to be conservative with our projections, so that on an annualized basis going forward, that's a number we're comfortable with presenting to you, and then if directed tonight, presenting to the public in a ballot measure. What this would do is it would provide us with that extra funding, that bump in funding, to repave all residential streets every 7 to 10 years. And that would help us get to that B rating. You may say, well, 7 to 10 years is a long time. But based on the strategy that we've employed in understanding and doing like the archaeology, coring and the technical things we've done to understand how our pavement works and how it is functioning, we're comfortable with that time frame, we're comfortable with those numbers, and we want to be able to be honest about what we can deliver. And based on even the most recent pavement work we've done with different type of applications, we are even more confident today that that time frame is workable. It is, I mentioned this before, this would be a locally controlled general tax measure. That means the revenue stays in this community, can't be taken by the state constitutionally. Under the state constitution, a locally derived sales tax measure and the Bradley Burns 1% that exists today constitutionally cannot be taken by the state of California. That was by a measure about 20 years ago that passed that protected revenue streams when the state was taking money from us as cities. This would be the first time ever the city did bring forward a sales tax measure. So one of the things that the council can do if tonight or at a future meeting we are directed to bring back a measure is that the council could at a future meeting before the item goes before the measure goes in front of the voters is express their spending priorities with the revenue proceeds of this measure. So we could come to you and say, or we can get some feedback from you and then come back to you at a future meeting and say, here's our 1 and 2 priorities of how we want to spend this money going forward. One of them could be, for example, yes, we agree, we want to repave every single residential road every 7 to 10 years. Show us how that proceeds from that tax can achieve that. How do we make sure that our sheriff's contract stays at the service levels they are today? It would be your priorities that you would be laying out so that you would be guiding for yourselves as the existing council that stands today and future councils. Here's what the voters kind of expressed. Here's what we have as a spending priority going forward.
Mayor Sternfurst, I have a quick question, if you don't mind. Can you go back to the one before this? Okay, so what you're saying is that if approved by the voters, this tax would approximately raise 2.5 million. But then the next bullet would say that the tax revenue would allow the city to repave all residential streets ever since. Are you saying all 2.5 million was
No.
needed? Okay,
No,
so
we
that's what I'm not clear on.
Yeah.
So, because then the next one you say, well, we could develop priorities. So basically, what you're saying, or we don't really maybe know the numbers right now, but of that 2.5 million, we would use some of that at some, we don't know the exact numbers yet, to reach that 7 to 10 year level or the quote B level. And then whatever's left, we can spend elsewhere.
Sure, and thank you for pointing that out, Councilmember Chavez. And one of the strategies that we could talk about going forward would be how we would essentially finance that going forward. Right now, the debt market is pretty tough.
Are you talking about the paving market?
Yeah, the debt market,
debt
going out and
market.
issuing
Okay,
bonds.
yeah.
Or what we could do is draw down on a certain level of phasing reserve, the drawdown of reserves over time, and essentially having that $2.5 million pay back reserves. It's kind of be our own bank, the Bank of Temple City, to kind of make that happen so that we can escalate ourselves up to getting to that B rating and finding a way to get there financially. And this would enable us to find a way over that 7 to 10 year period to get there.
And I believe that over the past few months, you have spoken at several different meetings, and during those meetings, we've gotten feedback from those in attendance and also perhaps online. Will that be provided to us at some point? In
Next
making that
slide.
making
Sorry
that
about that.
determination about what direction maybe we want to go, so.
So thank you. That's a perfect segue for me, sir.
You're welcome.
So what have we done? In January 2025, unfortunately with the fires, we delayed the poll, a professional poll that we did to see if the voters would respond, how they would respond to a 3/4 sales tax. And I'll talk about that in a minute. From about late September through the early part of November, we conducted extensive public outreach and did several public engagements and online things on our website, online, our social media posts as well, to engage the public so that they understand some of the financial challenges that we have, and that the council may consider a ballot measure coming before the voters. One of the other things you can do tonight, if you do decide to put a ballot measure forward, is all 5 council members, 2 of the council members, or 3 of the council members, you have first right of refusal to be an author in an argument for or against the measure. And then we talked about a spending plan going forward.
Would that be all or nothing, though?
No, you don't have to choose all or nothing.
Well,
You
what I'm
can,
saying is, can one council member sign as an author an argument for, and another council member sign as an argument against, or is that? that wouldn't make much sense. I mean,
In general, we find that if the council is voting as a body to put the matter on the ballot,
we would
then
want one voice.
you would want one voice.
Well, either way.
And, you know, the Brown Act still applies to the actual drafting of the argument, so you would have
You only have two people.
you would have an ad
I think that, I
hoc,
think we did that on Measure A.
Yep.
You did, yes, you did.
but then
Who
the
did that?
two would bring the matter back.
Bloom, I believe, was one, and then,
I think I was the other one.
and then you were the other one,
I guess I
yeah.
was, yeah.
And then, as you did before, then the two would bring the matter back to the whole council in an agendized meeting to get concurrence, and then all the council could sign.
So last part of the presentation here, I know this has been a long one, and I appreciate your patience. So to your point, Councilmember Chavez, we did a lot of community group, a lot of public community meetings, did both in person, town hall. We had a robust start. The last one, probably that we didn't have as many folks that come in, those who were interested, I think, came in early, and it kind of waned after that. And with the virtual meetings, one of the other things we did was we provided both in person, online, and elsewhere, kind of a general survey as well. And I'll talk about the professional scientific survey we did as well. And people really talked about roads, public safety, managing our finances as top priorities. So we got about 300 and said those are really top priority things. In the scientific survey that we did back in late January, early November of last year, 64% of voters, after they heard arguments for and against a measure, a tax measure, 63.7%, about 64% rounded off, agreed that they would vote yes for a measure, 25.3% no, 11% were unsure. Where that 11% splits, I'm not a pollster, so I couldn't tell you, but you essentially have a professional scientific survey that tells you that there is receptiveness to a tax measure.
It doesn't have to be 51%, it's 50 plus one vote.
Correct, sir.
That's a big difference.
It is. So tonight, for your consideration, you have several resolutions, and I'll try to go through them quickly but thoroughly. The first resolution, 255845, it submits the ballot measure. In this case, as written for the March 3rd, 2026 election. We talked about the voter requirement. Some of the language in the ballot measure itself says that locally controlled measure and strict accountability. So this would be audited no different. This would be audited and kind of called out by the auditors as well. So the audit committee, which exists currently of Councilmember Yu and Councilmember Chavez, the auditors would know this measure is coming forward. They would note it. They would note how we're using that funding, making sure that we are walking through that and meeting the requirements of the ordinance going forward. As I talked about earlier, the other resolution sets the priorities for written arguments regarding the measure and directing my colleague, the city attorney, to do an impartial analysis. We just talked about what the council can choose to do in voting for, or in writing a argument for or against, wherever the majority may land on it, and that establishes the priority of selecting the arguments. You, as the council, have first priority.
Could I ask a quick question on that issue? Currently, when you decide to run for city council, you can submit a ballot statement, obviously. That's limited to 200 words. Is this ballot argument also has limitations as to the amount of words that there can be used?
Yes, it does, and I don't know it off the top of my head.
It's
I'm going
more
to
than
point to
the
my colleague,
200.
my
They're
colleagues, the
usually
city clerk or city
page
attorney.
and a half.
Because let me tell you something, it's hard to say things in 200 words or less, especially for an attorney.
Ballot argument, you get 300 words.
A whole 300.
But your city attorney gets 500 words for the impartial analysis.
Oh, okay, so we got 800 going for us, basically. Okay.
So the other ballot measure, the other resolution has to do with the rebuttal arguments. And just it allows a rebuttal. So if somebody submits a argument in favor or against, there is a rebuttal that's allowed as well by the supporters or opponents of the measure.
Did we have a rebuttal argument against Prop?
No, you did not.
I don't think we did. Yeah, I think we had people talk about it, but they never, because they have to form a committee and all that kind of stuff, don't they, Greg? And do it
Not
kind
to
of.
do a rebuttal.
Not to do a rebuttal argument on the ballot?
No, they
Can
can.
anybody do a rebuttal?
But they have to pay a fee or do something, I
There,
guess.
there is an order of priority that the elections official, your city clerk would go through. A sort of officially formed group has priority over a unofficial community group, but an unofficial group has priority over an individual.
Okay.
So if you get multiple in, your city clerk knows how to prioritize them, and if two are of equal priority, then I believe she either flips a coin or draws cards.
So there can only be one rebuttal,
Yes.
okay.
And sorry, and lastly is and I spoke about this earlier, we would do a first reading of the ordinance today, but it wouldn't be effective until a second reading, and that second reading would not take place until whenever said election takes place, and when said election is, we get affirmative, and it's an affirmative vote, and it is a certified. So we do that we would do that from a timing standpoint to talk about when the tax would take effect, because we don't want to delay. We want to limit the amount of delay, the effectiveness of when that tax comes into place. I've spoken for a long time. I'm here for any questions that you may have.
Anyone? Questions? Yes? Yes?
Who's, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go, you, see, we looked at you first, so.
No, not at this time.
Okay. William?
Yeah, sure. Regarding, so Brian, could you speak a little bit about the state of outside funding sources that comes into the city? So, for example, you spoke on roads, there's the gas tax that everyone talks about. And I know during our budget discussions, there's an assortment of all these different funds and props, all these monies that kind of come in that we use to not just do roads, but, you know, other aspects of our capital projects plan. In general, what's your take on the state of those funds moving forward? And how does that impact the way we budget for, plan for these kind of projects? Because what I'm trying to get at is these outside funds, some of them are cyclical, some of them, there's like a certain annual amount that comes in like clockwork. And then others, like I'm not going to count ARPA in that because that's a one-time infusion. So what's sort of the state of these other funding sources that the city also relies on? And how does that play into the discussion of the sales tax measure we're discussing today?
Thank you for that question, Mayor Pro Tem Mann. I'm going to speak in some generalities, and I'll try to be where I feel comfortable being specific, I'll be specific. I would say, generally speaking, our subvention funds, meaning those funds that either come from the state or are tied to specific things like gas tax. Gas tax is not cyclical. It's cyclical in the way that not general economy, but it's cyclical in what's happening in the overall market with EVs and everything else.
Because that fluctuates, right?
It does fluctuate, but the way I would describe it right now, it is stagnant in growth.
Okay.
And will likely, very likely go down over time. So the subvention funds that we have, that outside funding sources, at best, they're going to stay stagnant and not keep up with inflation, or have not kept up with inflationary costs, and in some cases are likely and have started to trend down. So one of the challenges we have, and one of the reasons why we bring forward to you a sales tax measure, is we kind of need not only to close that gap of where those subvention funds are either staying stagnant or going down, but have a revenue source that does grow. I mean, we'll have bumps and bumps in the road on sales tax like we do every year, but generally speaking, our sales tax revenue continues to trend upward. So this is a revenue source that trends upward, doesn't necessarily keep with inflation, but for those funding sources that you're talking about, Mayor Pro Tem, the subvention from some of the state, the subvention from some funds from the county, they're not growing at a pace that we can count on from a planning perspective to say, like, I can't tell you tomorrow that for the next year, I can guarantee you we will be able to do X square footage of roads, in a year from now. I can give you a range, but I can't guarantee you, and also too, that level's not gonna grow at the rate that we need it to grow. I hope that answers the question.
It does, and kind of similar, in a similar vein, a lot of what we talk about with respect to stuff that the city owns and maintains, there really, from your perspective, there really isn't a lot of dedicated funding sources that are focused on maintenance, right? So you look at our community center and an assortment of other heavily used public infrastructure besides the roads. There really isn't a annual cyclical funding source that is available to upkeep and address those issues. These are things we gotta either find our own source of money, or we just really gotta save and plan for one big infusion of cash for some large project, right?
Yes, so that's what you've been doing. You've been saving and planning on the big projects. But to your point of maintenance funds going forward, most funds look for something, like those outside funding sources, you need to look for something new. There's very few things that have a maintenance component, and that's always been the kind of the argument from people, like, okay, well, you're gonna give us $20 million or whatever amount to do this, but you give us nothing to maintain it over time. There's nothing in there to the scale of maintaining things like Live Oak Park, or even our existing parks. When we build our existing parks from the funding that we get, we are having to adjust or understand, from a staffing standpoint, how we tweak that to maintain those parks over time. And we actually figure out how to construct it that way. So to answer your question, no, there's not outside funding that's gonna be able to help us maintain our facilities. We have to pay for that. We gotta find our own way to pay for those things.
Mayor, may I just add a thought?
Yes.
I think that's, perhaps it's partially true, because we do have, and your slide even shows that, in addition to gas tax, you have Prop A, Prop C, that potentially could be used as some.
Yeah.
Right? And then we have Prop R and Prop M, Measure R and Measure M money. However, I think the key point is that none of these, they're either very, very specific for certain arterial streets.
Yes.
Or, in general, they're not sufficient. They're putting a dent in the whole maintenance needs. They don't actually pay for the entire thing.
If we were dependent on those measures alone, we
Right.
would no longer be at a C rating,
Yeah, it would be even worse.
even worse.
Right.
And there's no guarantee that we're gonna even get those in the future either, because we're at the
No.
mercy of
No.
whoever's granting those funds.
Yeah.
We're at the mercy of the voters, and so, we can, and that's why, and also too, that's why strategically the council has done a pay-as-you-go approach and not bonded against those as well, just because to not put us in a position to have that ongoing debt obligation with the potential threat in the future that some of that either may go away or there may be adjustments.
And on topic of gas tax, with the advent of EVs, and now with more EVs, people drive more EVs, right? I mean, we have 3 EV cars for council here. EV people don't pay gas tax. I mean, just by definition.
Although I
Right.
think what
Before.
happens is, the more EV cars get, the higher they raise the cost of gas for those who still have gas.
And not only that,
So
EV
it's
cars
like-
are heavier.
I mean, gas, you look at the price of gas right now, it's almost $5 a gallon.
Right.
But the oil prices are going down, but the gas prices keep going up.
Right, and the EV cars are heavier, so they have more wear and tear on the roads, right? I mean, I drive a very
Maybe we need
small,
to impose an electric tax.
I drive the smallest EV that you can find. It's 4,000 pounds, over 4,000 pounds. I don't know if you, for me that looked it up, I was astonished it was over 4,000
Yeah.
pounds. That little car that I have,
Okay, imagine what those big Tesla trucks weigh. Those
Cyber
things-
Well, I don't know.
Cybertruck, those things gotta weigh.
Probably like
How about
Three times that.
9,000 pounds or whatever, yeah.
double decker?
So gas tax actually is not a very dependable source for us anymore.
Not moving in the future, it won't be.
No.
With, I believe the last 2 fiscal years, I'd need to double check, but the growth rate we've been projected from compared to like 2015, 16 is much different and much more stagnant.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
That was, yeah, that explained it pretty well. And my last question is related to the 2.5 million approximation that you showed. I mean, unlike our property taxes, sales taxes, I guess, are a bit more subject to the economic times. So could you share just what are some of those basic assumptions behind
Sure.
arriving at the 2.5 million?
So we consult with HDL companies, who is the predominant sales tax consultant in the state of California. So we asked them a while ago, when you first talked about this, to provide us with an estimate. We go down just a little bit, down a bit from their estimate as well. So we will rely on the subject matter experts to really tell us, is this within a range that makes some sense? So that 2.5 million is kind of a range of where they thought we would be. I would say a little bit more conservative. Hopefully it will bring in more revenue in the future, but from a budgetary standpoint, we'd want to stay at the 2.5%. And that jives, that corresponds with exactly kind of where we are with our Bradley Burns as well, because this would then capture because it's a transaction and use tax, so it captures some other transactions that originate here in the city, either by the person or the business, that's not always captured by Bradley Burns as well. So it corresponds. And so in some cases with some cities, even lesser tax than the 1% Bradley Burns brings in more revenue, but we wanted to be conservative. And we meet quarterly with HDL, our sales tax consultant, to understand, and they have actually proprietary software and information working directly with the Board of Equalization to understand the sales tax trends, see who's paying, see who's not paying, and having that information. So they're an essential partner for us in understanding where our sales tax revenues is trending, and has trended and where they project it's going.
Thank you.
And as a follow-up to that, I would hazard a guess that those revenue sources may go down moving into the future as far as where we're getting those sales tax dollars from, because retail is basically kind of dying. We don't get any money from Amazon or anything like that, do we?
Not to bore you with the way that.
Give me the short version.
I'll give you the short version.
All right.
Scott, Mr. Reimers has to sit to the boring version every quarter. So there's something called the county pool. So those sales tax, some of that, but things have actually changed in state law recently of where point of sale happens with online transactions. So there are some cities, which I will not name, in California that are taking great advantage of some of those changes in state law. But bottom line is, some of that comes into what's called the county pool, so we get a portion of that.
Oh, okay.
40% of our revenue.
Small portion, but-
Small portion. About 40% of our sales tax revenue right now, even in changes in the economy, are coming from both fast casual and sit-down restaurants. It is replaced what used to be both the mom and pop or big box type of retail. What has replaced that is food service and those kind of services.
And I guess you could say the good thing for Temple City is we are becoming quite known for our restaurants.
Right, and
Many
we have a
people-
limited,
Many people, not just Temple City people, but many people outside the city come and enjoy those foods. So that's where a lot of the tax revenue would probably come from.
And the last thing I'll say, to not bore you as well, is that if you look, and this is proprietary, but if you look at our top 100 sales tax generators in the city, while in sectors it's bunched, like 40% of the revenue coming from, sales tax revenue coming from restaurants, the diversity of the amount of businesses that we see in that list is a little, it can always be more robust and it can always be more diverse in terms of its business type, but it is not, we are not dependent on one or two sales tax revenue generators to produce 50% of our revenue. So we are not dependent, for example, on two or three big boxes to generate a significant portion of our sales tax. So I think to your point, Councilmember Chavez, is that while, yeah, there are cyclical things in the economy and that 2.5 could go to 2.3 one year or maybe even higher than that, we're not a one-horse town that we're dependent on that one or two generators. And if we have to, then if the one or two sales tax generators go away, I'm coming back to you and saying, we got to find X millions of dollars of cuts or whatever else to our operating budget.
Seeing that most of the cities that have either hotels or car dealerships fare very well from these measures, I think, none of which we have, unfortunately. So we have to take what we can get. All right. I had another question, but I think I'll just hold off on that.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Is that it for you?
I think it's been it for me for a while, but that's okay.
All right.
I think unless you're done, if you're done with council questions,
No,
ma'am.
is there any other questions?
Maybe just one. With regards to the timing, well, let me just preface it. I think city manager has definitely made the case, and I'm. I know it's not time for comments just yet, but I'll just preface it with that. I think with regards to the timing of the election, Councilman Chavez has reminded me, and I just looked down briefly. I looked it up, my ballot statement from when I submitted my name 2 years ago, which I know it never got printed because the election was canceled. If there were to be no other candidates that run for the March election, what is the timing and sequence if this would go on the June statewide primary election?
Thank you, Councilmember Chen. So it's same time frame. So think about the 120 days. So you would, in terms of when you would place it on the ballot, so no problem. If you were to do a June 2026 election, the legal deadline to add that would be March 6th.
Okay, and I just wanted to make sure that if the election were to be canceled for lack of any other nominees for the office of city council, that the council has the option of placing the same exact ballot onto the June election, being that it is a regularly scheduled election and that there's no other impediments in the way of us being able to do that. I think you could kind of get at what why I'm asking the question. I think 2 years ago, I was fortunate that I submitted my name. There was no contest for the election, and to save the city the cost of running that election. So I think if the city manager, city clerk, you can remind the public what usually is the cost of an election, how it would compare if we were to have this particular ballot measure on the March ballot, and how much it would be for the June election.
I can answer that first question first, and I'll need to provide a little bit of information about the difference between a March election and a June election. To run the election ourselves for March, it's about $250,000 to do it. If looking at the county's system, it would be about $131,000 to do a June election. The one thing I would note, though, is that the March election is a general, under the state constitution and state law, you can place a tax measure as either a general purpose or a special tax on a regular municipal election. To do it on a June election, you would have to consider emergency findings for that. You would have to declare, and it does not have to be a fiscal emergency. It can be an emergency where you find findings about the urgent need for that revenue source at that time.
Now, is that the law clear on whether that occurs for a special, because it's clear that this is going to be a general purpose sales tax, but is that what I believe the Constitution reads is that it's going to be a special election, or an emergency clause is only necessary for a special election that is outside of a regularly scheduled election, being that, yes, we have our normal municipal election occurring in March, but the state also has its consolidated general election, the primary election occurring in June and the general election occurring in November. So if there would be if we were not to have a municipal election, would this be able to go on a June ballot?
So we would have to make the findings. The way that the language reads is it ties a general tax to your municipal election, and it's frankly, it's for the purpose of ensuring that general taxes that only need the 50% plus one aren't held at times when, when candidates can't run against a tax. Special taxes, there are different rules about putting special taxes on those non-municipal general election dates because those take 66.7%. So those can be put on the other dates, but the threshold's higher. We would have to make, as the city manager said, make some findings. We would have to do some research and make some findings on what emergent situation exists that would require this to go on in June. And that would be, if we get direction, we'll go ahead and do that work.
Greg, would a June date still be 50 plus one, or is that 2/3?
That would still be 50 plus one if you were able to make the findings.
Yeah, but at this point, we're not sure what those findings, what shape those findings would be, and if we can even kind of strongly say that, yeah, these are going to work.
I will say,
And who makes that determination of the findings?
we will certainly work together to present the best package for the council, and then the council would have to determine whether you think that the findings that we've presented to you are sufficient.
Okay, but so it's up to us to decide if the findings are sufficient? That's kind of the fox garden hen house, isn't it?
Well,
I mean,
there's.
who would come back or is there a body out there that says, no, those aren't sufficient, I'm sorry?
There are always members of the public who are not particularly good
So they would have to
good
bring a
friends.
lawsuit or challenge those findings?
Correct.
All right. Yeah.
Okay, if there's no other questions, I'm going to open up public comment. Is there anyone who'd like to speak to this? No? Okay.
Is this comments time? or-
No public.
Public
Oh,
comment.
public comments, I'm sorry.
Okay, seeing no public comments, then we are going to go to council questions or comments. I close public comment. Final question, Vincent? Oh, let
Okay.
me start on this end, Tom. We
you.
started on that end last time.
Oh, sure.
Well, Councilmember Chen, I appreciate your words, and I think I kind of understand what you're getting at, and that is that certainly we may have a March election coming up, and this certainly could be an issue in that March election. Theoretically, let's say, for example, and I'm not trying to put words in anybody's mouth at this point, but let's say Vince and I decide to support this tax measure, and those who are running against us decide to run on the platform of no new taxes, so to speak. Obviously, then, our fate could be determined by this particular tax measure. It would just be another thing. I don't know that necessarily scares me from running or concerns me from running. I think I feel confident based on our track record over the last number of years that We have been always doing the things that are in the best interest of the city as a whole. And I think a very good case, as we've heard tonight, can be made for these, for this tax measure. There's a lot of good arguments for it. And, you know, I can remember back when I first started running, or when I first decided to run for city council, I don't remember who told me, but some politician, somebody that I had talked to, said, look, there's two things that you need to be concerned of: good roads and public safety. Well, guess what? The two priorities are on our survey: good roads and public safety. And I would imagine that when it comes down to the council setting priorities, as we've already heard, and I think as we've already expressed before, those have long been our priorities as well. And so, you know, I think the voting public will understand. I think a lot has to do with the education that we've done so far and what we hopefully will do in the future. Whether I or Vince wins the election obviously remains to be seen, if there is one. But I still think it's a good thing for the city. I think not only is it a good thing for the city, but it's almost like, I don't want to say necessary, but in a way it kind of is. I mean, you know, sometimes progress comes at a cost. And this is not necessarily a cost that's simply going to be borne by our residents, our businesses, which of course it will to a certain degree. But, you know, as we've heard, you know, most of our income comes from our restaurants, which are, you know, visited by people outside the city. And so far, we're not taking advantage of that. I mean, we're losing money every day as people come in and spend money in Temple City, basically. And those people are using our roads, and they're using our public safety services and everything else. So, you know, there is a very good argument, I think, for that. So, you know, I like what the survey says. I like the arguments that can be made. And I think most people will understand once they see what we're doing. I think they'll agree with it as well. People have already come up to me because they've heard, of course, based on Brian's talks about, well, we're thinking of doing this, and you know, there are questions they have. Of course, everybody wants to know, well, what are you going to spend it on? Okay, nobody ever wants to pay more taxes. Nobody does. But, you know, when a good argument can be made for it, I think, you know, it's obviously other cities we've seen are all 10.5 or above. You know, as in Rosemead are the ones that are not there. And, you know, I'm not going to speak for Rosemead, but, you know, obviously they have their own issues to deal with. So, you know, I support it. I guess based on what Councilmember Chen has brought up, maybe some will talk about, well, do we want to do this in March? Do we want to do it in June? I think there's arguments for and against that as well. But obviously it's going to affect me more than some of the other council members, but I'm confident that it will happen. And, you know, I remember back to when we passed Measure A and we extended the term limits. Everybody was thinking, well, that's pretty self-serving and stuff, but that overwhelmingly passed. I mean, it wasn't even close. I think it was like 80% or something like that, more than 70%. So, last thing I want to say is, who comes up with this ABC grading thing? Where is that coming from? I think I asked that question before, but the short answer.
Ask the engineers.
All right.
No, sorry, I didn't mean to make it.
I mean, obviously, there's some body out there that says, okay, this is an A, or this is a B.
That's the way, it's actually a scale of 0 to 100.
Okay.
And so the way, it helps me understand it.
Okay, so it's
I
not
do
really
A,
an
B,
A,
C,
B,
D,
or
yeah,
C
that's
then.
how-
Yeah, so it's not, so nobody says, well, you
Mayor
have
Pro Tem put it
you
in
have a
perspective
B-
as a
you have
part-
a B
my-
grade for your streets. They
I'll
say a
let Michael-
percentage, basically.
Correct.
Okay.
So typically, the engineers, which I am, we talk numbers.
All
So
right.
we go with the 0 to 100
All
scale.
right.
But what Brian is describing from a traffic world, which I also wear a hat in the traffic world, we talk levels of service, and we talk A through F. So It's not a stretch in terms of what Brian described,
Yeah.
in terms of the ABC.
I just think I don't think people understand the ramifications of that, because it would seem to me, based on our discussions, that it's almost impossible to get an A, really. And I would challenge that, is there any other city in San Gabriel Valley that would have an A grading at this point?
I'm not aware of anyone
Yeah.
who would
I doubt
score
it.
in the
Yeah.
90s on an average basis.
Yeah.
Now, there may be individual streets, obviously,
Well, yeah,
that
of course.
are very
Yeah.
well maintained, but
Yeah.
on
And I'm sure the
average,
argument
no.
can be made for us, we have some pretty, really good streets that would deserve an A rating as well. I don't know, it just seemed to me it should be a pass-fail, you know, rather than A, B, C, D, or whatever, but that's just me. But yeah, I have no problem with the measure, but at the end of the day, it's up to the voters, you know, really, at the end of the day, and, you know, it's up to them to decide, you know, and again, I think if they fully understand, as we do, that the monies are gonna be put to a use that will benefit them, which, and again, maintenance, infrastructure, streets, public safety, those are all pluses. Those are all things that they want provided, and we need to provide those things to them. And, you know, we can't come back later on and say, sorry, we don't have the money to do it anymore, and, you know, that's it. So, thank you.
Okay. Vincent?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I mean, everything that Councilmember Chavez said, I agree. And I just start by saying that I totally support the measure. I think as a city council, we are mandated, voters put us here, is to look out for the quality of life of the citizens. And also a big component of that is not just looking at current services that we're providing them, is to look at what future may bring us. And as Councilmember Chavez pointed out, we've been looking at this for long years, ever since we've been on the city council. As a matter of fact, at the time, I remember after we've done some pavement studies, and we were actually doing, remember those joint meetings of Planning Commission and Public Safety Commissions? We actually were, at the time, we were looking at actually, we need $4 million annually in order to maintain our roads. And I'm so glad that with our city engineer, TransTech, and we've been doing a lot of experiment in the last few years with different way of saving money on repaving the roads. I'm glad we're down to a very doable 7-10 year cycle of maybe some also new techniques that we can keep up the roads. Now it's $2.5 million. I will also go out on a limb to say that there are no cities that I know of that actually have a way to maintain their roads at a good enough level without any kind of money investment. You know, I personally, just like Councilmember Chavez said, nobody likes Texas. I don't like Texas either. But however, we're in a situation we don't do something, another agency is going to start looking at this gap between the statutory allowed sales tax and our current percentage is going to take advantage of that. We would, if that happens, we totally would have lost control of that possibility. And also our opportunity of improving and keeping up our roads at a high enough condition. I asked a question earlier, what does putting in our Mr. Manager's lingo, right? What does D means? What does, or worse than D means? I mean, it had a direct impact on our public safety. I mean, not just your front end of your cars, not just your tires. I mean, it is definitely, the city would be forced when the condition goes down to pull money from other sources, general funds and other reserve, to pave the roads, because bad roads is dangerous. Potholes are dangerous. It impacts emergency response. It impacts everybody getting in and out their houses. So I don't think not having this measure, and I think this is actually I'll steal this from Mayor Pro Tem Min. Mayor Pro Tem Min previously asked, what's the alternative if we don't do it, right? I mean, you asked that question. Is it a consequence that we all like to accept? No, I think with a city like us, when I'm pretty proud that we're a great city. We have kept up our conditions of our city. You know, we have nice houses, we have nice parks, and we've been investing in our parks. I mean, the last thing you want is have bad roads, right? So, I mean, the whole development of the city needs to be congruent. And I must say, the only way, I think that the city council and city staff, and thank you for city staff for we've been looking at this problem for a long, long time, for over 10 years. And the only way to do it is to invest money into it. And I'm glad, I'm very honored to be with the city council that we take our fiduciary responsibility very seriously. And when Councilmember Chavez and I came on the city council, we have about $20-some million reserve. We're still there. We're still maintaining that level of reserve. But yet we were able to also be wisely invest in city services and also provide, and we have invest money in parks and so forth. But there is one thing that I think the council had identified that really needs some work. I mean, like I said, we're mandated to look into the future. And one of the things that we really seriously need is to keep up our roads. And this is one way, a viable way that we can do it. Even though Mr. City Manager said this may or may not keep up with inflation, but in concept anyways, if a sales tax percentage as commodities rise in prices, potentially it can keep up with inflation somewhat. So, and I'm in total agreement with Councilmember Chavez. It's not only is the right thing to do, it is the necessary thing for this council to do. It's a necessary thing for residents to vote in agreement. So I am in support of the measure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Chan.
Okay, well, it's difficult following both of these statements because I feel like they spoke with such passion and leading with so much experience for this city. And of course, I already stated that I too have no problem supporting the resolution as written to send this to the voters because of all the reasons that's been already articulated. I brought it up, some of the questions. I thought that was so transparent and so courageous of both of you to address it head on. This could be brought on later on. This could have been brought on. There's 2 other elections in 2026 that the council could look at addressing our sales tax. But we're talking about it now, during the middle of a candidate filing period, to invite any comments from the community. Our city manager has tirelessly gone to every PTA in our school district, as well as other community groups, and reached out to many. I only brought up the example and the questions about the timing because in my election 2 years ago, or on our election 2 years ago, when there was a lack of a candidate, the city saved $250,000. So if, I know we're talking about it here and now, if the filing period closes, there would be another opportunity to visit the timing of the election issue. I think it's courageous that we're talking about it and we're just opening the dialogue with the community here, so there's absolutely no issues with it. But I would also like to see that if the majority of the cities, as well as any would-be candidates, agree that the city's going the right direction and not the wrong track, and that they all agree that this was, the men that spoke before me, that spoke with such passion and experience, and that leadership is needed, that we look at, after the close of filing, that we put it on the June filing period, the June ballot, to consolidate with the county. And I argue that because, number one, it does not take away from our effort to put this important topic before the voters on the March election. But in the event, if we don't have a March election, then we can have another discussion because we have all the way up until, as the city manager says, 100 some days or March 3rd before we decide whether to put it on a June ballot. So there is time for us to look at a future date. That's not what I'm proposing. What I'm proposing is that we adopt this tonight. But in the event that if we don't have an election in March due to lack of candidates, then we would have an opportunity to revisit that and putting it on a June ballot, because that's a substantial saving. $120,000 would be a saving for the city if we were to delay that vote.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate all the comments from my council colleagues, so I won't belabor those points. I concur with a lot of the points that they made. We've been hearing the term local control on council and in other situations, but we usually hear about that in the context of planning and housing development. But I like bringing that term in when we talk about this, because at the heart of the questions I asked before was really getting at how much control do we have over our own destiny when it comes to the money. And it seems that even as a lean and mean contract city, we are inevitably dependent on various sources that are outside of our control. And so the proposition before us for this sales tax measure firmly puts a revenue source directly in our local control. Like the city manager said, there are laws in the legislature that prevent this money to be taken by the state or any other entity. So we would be in sole control over our own destiny with respect to that $2.5 million. And I think that's really important because it creates more certainty in how we budget, how we plan, how we can invest. And I would say that is incredibly important if we look at it alongside what Councilmember you mentioned earlier was we have been looking at this for a long time. And from an engineer standpoint, I think doing that, we've gathered a lot of really important data that allows us to make better decisions, or in engineers' term, where we can optimize solutions, we can optimize the way we do things. And kind of at the heart of the engineering issue is when it comes to pavement management and planning, a lot of agencies are adopting what I call more generalized approaches to how you evaluate roads, how you decide what type of treatments you put on your roads. But now I think, a lot of credit to TransTech for really adopting this new approach, which is, hey, let's do a little bit upfront work to better understand what our roads are on, because that's not really going to change, right? It hasn't changed for so many years. It's not going to change in the future unless we completely redo the entire city, which is not going to happen. So with that extra data, now we can actually make better decisions. So I was really glad, Councilmember, you referenced that 4 million estimate from 10 years ago, because I think even if you factor in cost of living increases, inflation, whatever it is still a significant gap in, even if it's an estimate. It shows that we've optimized. So the engineering, that work has been done. And I think that's important because when it comes to asking voters for a tax measure, it really boils down to trust and credibility. And so I too am honored to be on a council which I believe has been very committed to maintaining and growing the trust and credibility within Temple City, within the city that we love. Because we know that when it came down to the more difficult asks, this is the moment that we've been building for, is, hey, trust us, because this is our track record. This is what we've done in preparation leading up to this moment. And this is the moment that we're putting that before the voters. So it's taken a long time, but I think it was the right thing to do. It's the right moment. And I don't think we can afford to really belabor the issue. So I'm really glad that we're having this discussion. And I just want to end by really thanking our city manager and our city engineer for, all the outreach, all the data, and really the narrative of why we're doing this. And I think with all the momentum that we've been building as a city with investments in our parks and other infrastructure, I think this allows extra fuel into allowing us to keep up that momentum into these other areas that we haven't been able to touch. So I'm very excited about this, and I'm glad that we are discussing it tonight. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, William. I think for me, the catalyst for all of this is Vince has been such, over the years that I've served on council with you, probably the biggest advocate of our roads and our streets, and, mentioning just how we needed to find, some funding source. And it was almost 2 years ago, it'll be 2 years, I believe, in May, that I went to buy my car. And I was at the Hyundai dealer and purchasing my car. Well, it was the first time I ever leased a car. And the gentleman who was trying to sell me the upgrade insurance said, what city are you in? And I said, the city of Temple City. And he goes, oh yeah, that's the city with one of the lowest sales tax of everybody that I deal with that comes in from all the communities to buy a car. And I said, oh really? So you're not getting as much sales tax as you would like? And he said, well, that sales tax goes back to your city, where you live, and if you purchase a car, the sales tax goes to the city. Is that correct, Greg, that you live in?
That's correct.
Right? And
I believe that's correct, yeah.
I was totally shocked that that's the way a lease operated, and the sales tax goes to the city. And I remember coming
Only
back.
that little portion,
A portion.
not the entire. I mean, the count,
Yes.
the state still gets the lion's
Right,
share,
but
and
the
then
portion that
county,
comes.
yeah, right, we get that little
So I
share.
told Brian, I said, we need to do a sales tax measure. Let's put this, right, Brian? Let's look at doing a sales tax measure. And I'm, you're both up for reelection, but I will be soon after you in 2 years, all of us. And I'm happy to say that, I thought it was the right thing to do. And I don't like our city to be on the bottom of the barrel of anything. And when I looked at all the other cities and saw that, we were just right there with the city of Rosemead, and why hadn't we done this in 64 years, I believe it is, since 1960? I mean, when you look at the amount of years, we haven't raised the sales tax since the history of the city, but you look at that at numbers, heck, that's 64 years almost, or thereabout. I mean, that's a very long time in itself that we have really, the city councils before us also have not raised sales tax because they wanted to keep the sales tax reasonable for the residents. And yet, because of that, there was never the thought of doing a sales tax measure such as the one that's before us to solve a problem that we're never going to have enough money to do, to maintain our roads. I serve on quite a few regional boards, and I have to say, when people from other cities will say, oh, I was driving by your city, Rosemead Boulevard looks beautiful, the trees, the maintenance, and they just comment so much about how beautiful the city looks. Well, a lot of them don't go through the residential streets. So on the other end, you hear from the residents like, when is the city going to come and fix the holes in my street? Or my street is such a mess, it hasn't been done in 25 or 30 years. So we have the perception on one end for people who come and use our arterial streets, how beautiful and well-maintained our streets are. But then if you go through the residential areas, we're somewhere about a C, right? So I think it's just the time to do that. And I appreciate Councilmember Chen's idea of, would it be possible to move the election to June because there would be a cost savings of about $120,000. But I also wonder, if there was some analysis done by the consultant that we hired, like, what would that really mean? Is there a benefit is the amount of voters that come out in June compared to the election in March? I mean, I think that would be information that I think would be valuable for us to know. If we decided to move it to June, if there wasn't an election, how would that affect the overall vote for people that come out to vote on that measure? So, I mean, that's just something I would be, concerned about. But if someone is ready to make a motion, we can entertain it.
So before we do that, I just have really one quick thing.
Yes.
I just have, we talked a lot about A, B, C, Ds, all that kind of stuff, right? Just wanted to share with all of you that it reminded me of when I was in law school. I had a law professor that said that students who got A's all become law professors. Students who got B's are the great lawyers, and the students who got C's became the judges. I won't tell you what my grade was, although keep in mind that not only am I a lawyer, but I've taught law classes too, so you can maybe figure out where I was. But I don't know if Greg has ever heard that, but that's, whenever we bring up that ABC, I always remind of that grading. So anyway, that little light, something to lighten the load a little bit. All right, thank you.
Ed?
Madam Mayor, I would like to take a crack at making a motion, and I know if there's no second, it's not entirely not done, but I just like to make a attempt at this motion. I think it's not only a statement that this council is supportive of all that has been said, but I think doubles down on the idea that we're inviting open discussion about it, and it could, let me just read into it. Adopt resolution number 255845, attachment A, for submission to the qualified electors relating to 3/4 cent, 75% per dollar transaction and use sales tax, Temple City Public Safety Roads City Services measure at the March 3rd, 2026 general municipal election. And that is exactly as staff recommended. This is the part where I'm adding, and further, that the city council direct the city clerk and city attorney that in the event the March 2026 municipal election is canceled due to lack of sufficient nominees, that the sales tax measure shall automatically be placed on the June 2nd, 2026 statewide primary election ballot. And then 2, 3, 4, exactly as stated. Adopt resolution number 25-5846, attachment B, setting priorities for filing written arguments and directing the city attorney to prepare an impartial analysis. Adopt resolution number 25-5847, attachment C, for the filing of rebuttal arguments. And number 4, conduct first reading of proposed ordinance number 25-1084, attachment D, establishing a transaction and use sales tax by adding Article F to Chapter 3 of Title 5 of the Temple City Municipal Code.
So everything is the same except for the election part, moving it to June, should there be no election due
Should there
to
be
insufficient
candidates, right?
I think I have a question that may, on that. I thought we need, as a body, need to make a finding before that measure could be put on June, so it cannot be just automatically before June.
Yes, sir. I was thinking that as Councilmember Chen was making the motion. I think the best way to do it would be that if it is not, if there are insufficient candidates for the March election, that instead of placing it on the ballot, to bring it back in January of 2026 so that the council can make the appropriate findings to be able to put it on a non-municipal election ballot.
Yeah, I agree. I had a concern about the wording on the automatic, and I thought maybe we better tone that down a little bit.
Right.
And I agree with the wording of the city attorney that sort of gives us the discretion, and of course, we have to vet it out even further and go through the process. So, yeah, Councilmember Chen, I would agree with the motion, but with the change, I don't know if you want to.
I
amend your
accept that
motion.
friendly amendment if you,
All right, yeah, I'm good with it, so. Well, we haven't taken a vote yet, but you'd have to amend your motion, of course.
So I have a follow-up question to that. So if that were to happen, we would still have enough time to make the March election based on the time
Yeah,
period?
so as I'm understanding the motion, you're setting in place the March 2026 election with, for lack of a better term, the caveat that if there is no, if the incumbents run unopposed and there's no election that's canceled, that you would then consider canceling that March 2026 election for the sales tax measure and bringing it forward for consideration with the requisite findings that you would need to make for the June 2026 election.
Yes, but I think I understand what Mayor Pro Tem's saying. If the, I had said that we would work up findings and they were ultimately up to council to decide whether they can make findings of emergency to put it on. City Clerk, what is the final date? On what date would we know if there was going to be a contested March election for the council members?
The nomination period closes on December 5th. Unless there's no incumbent filing, then it's extended to December 10th, the Wednesday.
Okay, and what day is this matter due to the county?
I'm sorry, what's due to the county?
The resolutions, if this matter were to, if this ballot measure were to go on in March, what day would it be due?
You mean June? Because we're standalone. so we're
No,
not-
no.
March.
Oh, so then what day would you need it for March?
So the last day to add a measure to the election is December 5th,
December 5th. So then,
the normal, or the last day for the nomination period if the incumbents were to file.
I don't think she
So-
answered the question.
right, so the last day for the incumbents to file is the same as the date to put the measure on?
Correct.
Okay. So then, yes, it's not as though there's some leeway to have a special meeting after that period
Okay,
and
yeah.
then understand.
So
And I think that's where you were
That
going.
is exactly where
Okay.
I was asking,
So
yeah.
are we saying we cannot make it if we wouldn't know in time then?
if I can just go back to the motion itself, I'm not arguing that let's not put it on March. The motion states exactly verbatim as stated, that we're putting it on the March ballot. And that is by the December 5th deadline, because we're doing it today on November 18th. However, when it comes to December 5th, and that there's not other candidates on the ballot, there will be a time when the council will cancel the March election. And at which time, there's still time for this ballot measure to go to the county with the deadline of March 3rd of 2026. So there's not a concern for the time, and there's actually really no need for me to add that caveat if there's to be an understanding that, because we're basing this decision on what happens on December 5th. I don't believe that, because that is a standalone election, that the deadline of declaring, of not putting this election would be affected if the election were to be canceled due to a lack of sufficient candidates.
Mayor, so I get where you're coming from, Councilmember Chen. I think my main concern is, at this point in the discussion, I don't fully understand the finding that our city attorney is saying would be necessary to place it on the June election. And because we're not really discussing that tonight, we can't really get into the meat of what that would actually look like. So really, the concern I have is not so much, maybe we're coming at it from, like, we're responding to different incentives. You're coming from the standpoint of how can we save money on the election? I'm looking at it from the standpoint of, is it necessary for us to even go through the motions of putting together the findings simply for the sake of putting it on the June election? Because my understanding is if it's on the March election, even without candidates, we wouldn't need to make the finding. Is that correct?
In fact, oddly enough, under the Elections Code, if you put a measure, in particular, a tax measure, but any measure on a municipal election, then even if there are only 2 candidates, those names still appear on the ballot.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Otherwise, you can cancel it altogether. But if you have a measure, then the candidates' names have to be in there, which, as rare as it is, allows for a qualified write-in candidate to attempt to go in.
So that's an interesting quirk. But I guess maybe the heart of my question is, even if, okay, so we wouldn't need a reasoning for the emergency if it's placed on the March ballot,
Correct.
right? That's the
Correct.
main distinction between March and
That's the
June.
distinction. And if the council would like to have more information about that, certainly you have the the December 2nd council meeting before that December 5th cutoff date. And I'd be more than happy to work up a staff report with the city manager to kind of give more information on what those types of findings are, what cities normally do, what the circumstances are that where you see them, so that you would have a better understanding if that's your desire. If you want to make a decision tonight, I'm fine. You have a motion pending that's waiting for a second. You're in the middle of discussion.
Greg, what is that process like for an emergency finding and the time frame?
It's different for everyone.
Oh.
And that's why I say it's a matter of, everybody does it a little bit differently depending on what factual circumstances they're facing.
Have you ever seen one turned down?
Turned down by a council or challenged by,
Challenged by the finding?
not in the last 10 years.
Okay.
But,
And with all due respect, that's why I would suggest as well to, if that's something to do, we have, where we do have time is at December 2nd meeting, and we can provide
Okay.
some of those questions for you with that.
Okay, is there a second to the motion then?
I have, Mayor, may I ask another question before we
Yes.
vote on this? Is it possible that we vote on it without Councilmember Chen's amendment tonight? And then revisit this in December 2nd to give the city attorney more time to bring back, because we can always vote on an amendment to something we approved in the previous meeting,
Yes, you have that time.
right? The other option could be we table this until December 2nd totally.
Yes, according to the statutory timeframe, you could table this until that time, and we would include in the staff report the option for, as described in the proposed amended motion, what would constitute the findings for the requirements to place it on a non-regular municipal election, or in this case, what's the June 2026 election?
So if we were going with my first suggestion, that is approving the resolutions as is tonight, then does Councilmember Chen need to bring another motion to direct staff to bring this back on? December 2nd? Or do we have the,
Actually, I think all this discussion has been very fruitful, and it just reminded me that the December 2nd meeting will allow for that opportunity for us to find if all this discussion was a moot point or not, because at which point we would likely find out if there are other candidates. If at that point there is a other candidate, then that caveat is not
or
necessary.
December 2nd is not quite 5th, so we're 3 days away though.
Correct. I think the main point getting across here is that if there is an opportunity for the city to not
Yeah.
hold its own election in a March setting and to allow actually to consolidate that with the counties, that we take the opportunity and take the time to do so. That I'm ready to go now. I'm ready to vote on that original motion, but I'm also happy to, I think that the point has been made across. I'm happy just for the, I would be amenable for the sake of
Yeah.
just a clean motion to just amend my motion to be exactly as spelled out by staff, but at the December 2nd meeting, we revisit based on the circumstance.
So what we would do, if that's the case, then we would bring back, the motion you make tonight based is kind of as written now, and that we would come back on the December 2nd meeting, myself and the city attorney, and lay out from the staff's perspective and the legal perspective, all the things that if, in fact, the council chose to withdraw the measure from the March election, push it to the June election, all the requirements that would then set out.
Do we need a motion for that, or is that something that
He
mayor
amended
can
his
just,
motion.
Well, so you have Councilmember Chen's pending motion, which is to move forward, as we've discussed.
To move forward as recommended by staff.
Sorry, but he said to move forward as recommended by staff, but to move it to, or to bring it back in January for the findings, and then, and said, but also to bring back on December 2nd to discuss whether that would even be necessary or not, and to be introduced to the findings so that if needed on December 2nd, you could, if you didn't feel that you could make the findings, you could have sort of this discussion again about whether to put it on in March or not. I believe that's where you are, sir. We're either going, we want to introduce the emergency findings before the cutoff date is the key thing, but your motion was to have it moved to June, but have that discussion about findings so that the council would know what they were doing before they acted. I believe that's what I heard, but if not, please correct me because I want to make sure I have it written.
That's not what I meant. It's,
Okay.
with regards to the emergency finding, that can come later. We have time, we have plenty of time for that. I think the point Councilmember you just made was that this can be voted on now without the amendment, without my qualification, because I think I got the point across enough where I don't think the public as well as this council wants to hold a standalone March election on this issue alone if there were to be no other candidates. If by the time December 2nd comes around, I know there's still 3 more days until the end of filing, there's still time because this is a standalone election for the council to determine whether to cancel that March election. So I'm fine amending my motion as is. I just wanted to state on the record that if December 5th comes around and there's no candidate, that the city would not be holding a standalone election on this ballot issue alone. We can consolidate in June and we can work on the emergency declaration later.
So if a candidate comes forward on the 5th, then we automatically go to a March election?
Yes,
Is that what
because
you're
this is,
saying?
because we're already voting on it as recommended or as spelled out. So that
So it
changes
just
nothing.
becomes a mute issue if somebody puts their name in on the last day?
Yes. Because there's always that election, that council meeting that happens before the election is declared, but that we would be canceling the election.
If I could respectfully make a suggestion. So what we will do as direction from the council is on the December 2nd council meeting, draft the staff report, draft the information that you've asked for in terms of how you then perform and bring forward a June election. So, because you have time between, because your last date to cancel the election, which you could do in a special meeting, would be December 10th. So, at that December 2nd meeting, what you could do, some of the questions that have been asked thus far about moving to a June election versus the general election, some of those questions could be laid out, and actually that you can actually give us additional direction at that time as well. So closer to Councilmember Chen's original motion as well. The original motion of, now granted, you don't know if you are going to be having an election or not, but you would have the additional staff information, the legal analysis, and the further direction at that point as well. So that would be a further direction item on the 2nd.
However, the motion, the measure as stated in the staff report get voted on tonight.
Yes, and I don't want to speak for council, and I don't want to speak for any.
Right, because you were making a suggestion, but you didn't talk about what's happening.
Sorry, and that would still be inclusive of assuming the actions.
Basically, what you're suggesting, Mr. City Manager, are really two separate actions.
Yes,
So the city council taking two separate, and one is to vote on all the resolutions as recommended by staff.
yes.
And secondly is bring back the study and for the city council to consider on December 2nd.
That's just respectfully a suggestion, based on the conversation I'm hearing.
So we don't need a new motion since that's already on the.
You would just need, I would need another, I would just
You
need
need
the
a second.
additional, I need additional direction on that.
And would that be directed by mayor, or is that the second coming back in December? Do we need a motion for that? And the reason why I say that, you know, so.
I think it would be
Councilman Chairman,
helpful
make
for
a-
staff, and it would be helpful for us to have that as, in the form
Okay.
of a motion.
So Councilman Chen, if you are amenable, then maybe your first motion will be just this one, and then we vote on it, and then you make a second motion to bring back December 2nd.
I accept that.
Two votes, right? Two with votes.
So can we have the first vote to vote as is?
Okay, I'll second.
Okay.
that.
Items
And then
1,
vote.
2, 3, and 4, as stated in the staff, as stated in the staff report?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry,
And
I don't mean to
maybe-
complicate this anymore, but I'm going to complicate it a little bit more. One of the resolutions you have before you is a item setting the priorities. Is their desire at this, but I have a feeling we can bring it back at the December. Huh?
You can bring it back.
So I'm going to withdraw that. One of the things we would do, just to make this clear, since we are coming back on the December 2nd meeting, is which members of the council, if they desire, to sign a argument for or against the measure as well. So we would bring that back as an
That's-
item.
On the 2nd, we'll decide that?
Yeah, on the 2nd, you can, because it's a tight time frame, but you have time to do it. It would be it would be tight, but we have time.
Could we form an ad hoc today for
If
that?
that is absolutely your desire, you could form
Yes,
an ad hoc.
actually, I'll say, City Manager, the way Resolution 5846 reads is that the arguments are due on December 2nd, is the date in here. City Clerk, can that be changed?
No, I don't think I think that's statutory.
That's what I was
So
thinking.
thank you to my colleague, and thank you, Mayor. So I would suggest a ad hoc tonight, if that is the desire of the council, to have that in place. And then if we get to December 2nd, and you have some different ideas related to the second motion about
Right.
bringing it back on a June date, based on the fact.
So we should have, that's why I was thinking, if we have that form before the 2nd, then.
Thank you, Mayor Sternquist. sequentially, that's the way to go.
Well, I am going to appoint myself. Can I do that?
You're
they-
the mayor.
Okay. To be on that ad hoc, I think it's important to have the mayor on this tax measure thing, I think. And is there someone else who would like to be on it? Okay, Vincent? Anyone else? We can decide.
Only two.
Okay. Well, I know, but I mean,
Yeah.
if anybody else wanted to, then we could decide.
Sorry, Mayor.
No,
Is that everybody fine? Okay.
I think
Okay.
to your point, he's been a
So Vincent and I will do that.
Good. Councilman Chavez, are you okay with that?
Sure, I'm fine.
Okay, so that's established.
So-
And now we need to vote.
You need so we need a vote on.
The second.
1, 2, 3, and 4.
Yes.
So essentially, this will be moved by Councilman Chen and second by me, right?
Yes, please.
And now we need a roll call.
Councilmember Chavez?
I'm not really sure what I'm voting for, but okay, yes. I'm just kidding.
No, you know what.
Yeah, I know what I'm voting for, yes.
Don't go down that road, sir.
Councilmember Chen?
Yes.
Councilmember Yu?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Man?
yes.
Mayor Sternquist?
Yes. Okay, so now we need another motion.
Yes, please.
Councilman Chen.
I move to, staff bring back at the December 2nd meeting, a staff report that, outlines the process and the timeline for a, June, to place the ballot on the June primary consolidated election in the event, that the election is canceled due to lack of candidates.
Perfect.
Okay,
I'll second.
okay, may we have a roll call?
Councilmember Chavez?
Yes.
Councilmember Chen?
Yes.
Councilmember Yu?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Man?
Yes.
Mayor Sternquist?
Yes. May we have the reading of the title of the ordinance?
Thank you, Mayor. Ordinance number 251084, an ordinance of City of Temple City, California, establishing a transactions and use sales tax by adding Article F, transaction and use tax of 2025 is hereby added to Chapter 3, Business Taxes of Title 5, Business Licenses and Regulations of the Temple City Municipal Code.
Okay, so that's complete.
We have direction. Thank you, Mayor and council.
Okay, do we have an update from our city manager?
I've spoken enough tonight, Mayor. Thank you so much.
Do we have an update from our city attorney?
Ditto.
And to council comments, reports regarding ad hoc or standing committee meetings, any? Nope. All right, council items separate from the city manager's regular agenda, anyone? Tom?
Okay. Jen, I'm glad you're still here. I just wanted to make sure that the council was aware that we're very proud to have both Sophia and Jessica are going to Australia
Yay.
next year. Two of our ambassadors, well-deserved. As you know, they're both on our youth committee, and they were chosen to be two of our ambassadors to Australia
Wow.
next year. So I know they're going to represent Temple City very well. Our Jen will be all upset with them, right? So, yes, actually, Jen's family hosted one of our Australian exchange students this year.
Yes.
Nice.
And so, yeah, they're very well looking forward to it. You know, I also was going to suggest that we close tonight's meeting in honor of one of our longtime residents who we actually recognized last year. Some of you may remember Larry Stevens, who turned 100 years old.
Wow.
And we had him here to present him with a proclamation. World
Remember
War
that, yeah.
II veteran, had participated in a lot of our veterans events. But I had told his family that, to give them a heads up, that we would like to close one of our meetings in his honor. And so if you don't mind, Mayor, I'd like to give them the opportunity, so maybe we can do that at our December 2nd meeting. I'll get you the information, or I'll get that to Peggy so she has it. But Larry Stevens, yeah, he passed away, unfortunately.
I'm
couple
wondering,
weeks
do
ago.
we send when we close the meeting, do we send something to the family? Oh, that's
Yeah,
very
but I
nice.
wanted to give them the heads up
Heads up,
before, yeah.
okay.
So, and I know some of his friends wanted to be here too. I don't know.
So we'll do that
I don't know if it's-
in-
Maybe we'll do that
is
in
it the
December,
sec-
second
okay.
meeting, if you don't mind. Yeah,
Just remind me.
yeah, I will, yeah. What have we been doing since our last meeting? I don't think we had any events.
Veterans
Whatever-
Day.
What we did?
Veterans
The
Day.
Veterans Day, yeah, of course. It was a great event. I give a lot of, applause to our Parks and Rec, as always. They do a fantastic job. Adam and his staff didn't let anybody down this year. It was a very well-attended event. I think probably one of the biggest one we've had in a long time, so. Good job. That's it, thank you.
And thank you to Athens for sponsoring the
Yeah,
lunch.
Athens always sponsors the luncheon, so that was good.
Vince?
No, I agree. The Veterans Days event was a wonderful event, and thank you to our staff, and obviously, we're very great gratitude to our veterans and currently in the armed forces, and may God keep them safe. But I must say to Mayor, I'm very excited tonight, actually, that we finally, after all these years, that we brought this pavement management issue to, I think, a good resolution. I'm very excited about that. So thank you to you, thank you to our city manager and TransTech and everybody who's involved with this pavement. And to the Mayor Pro Tem's point, I mean, we actually have data that is, they have scientific data to support our findings, and very excited.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ed? How about Service Council? No?
The Metro Service Council had its meeting over with the Metro CEO today, and that's where, what I attended before today's meeting. It was canceled due to a technological issue. The Zoom did not work, but we had some good dialogue with the CEO.
Okay. That's it? William?
Ditto on the Veterans Day event. It's always, for some reason, we always luck out with the weather on that day, which makes for, adds to the quality of the event as well as the turnout. And certainly great to see all our veterans represented and acknowledged and given the thanks that they so rightfully deserve. So thank you to our staff for always making that great. Also, the one thing I think the mayor and I were talking about at the event was a shout out to the crew that flies the vintage planes. I know they've been doing it for us for a number of years, and it's always a great treat for everyone to attend, to be able to look up and just see the flyover, and they do such a great job. So really a shout out to, I think they're called Golden Eagle. Yeah, so out of Almont. I still call it the Almont.
Do we send them a thank you?
We do, they don't charge us, so we just pay for the
So just
insurance.
make sure that we do that again. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, and looking forward, I know we have a appreciation event for our commissioners coming up this week, so looking forward to that. Thank you.
Thank you. A couple of just board briefs from Sanitation District that I attended on Monday. There is on December 6th, there's a public tour of the Valencia Water Reclamation Plant in Valencia. I know it's a ways, but it's family-friendly if anybody wanted to go out. And it's at 28185, the old road in Valencia, but they're having all kinds of exhibits if anybody was interested. This was probably the shortest District 15 board meeting I went to because there was very little on the agenda. I walked in, we voted, and we walked out, all in about 8 minutes. So it was pretty quick. So very efficient and very quick. I was able to go to an event, Ed, went also. It was put on by the COG, and it was a celebration of the 5-year anniversary of the establishment of the Housing Trust. So they honored Susan Rubio, since she was the milestone, person behind all of that. And Ed, I can't remember the amount of money that do you recall how many millions she has been able to secure?
I don't recall the exact number, but I know when it comes to the housing trust, there was, there's been obviously a lot of discussion in the region about providing housing services. And in my previous role as a homeless liaison officer, I definitely see that up close. I'll just have to say that, thank you for reminding me. At the event, our mayor was recognized multiple times by those in attendance because she served as the COG president during the year when the Housing Trust was established. So while that event was a 5-year milestone for the establishment of that trust, there was a lot of recognition of our mayor's leadership during that time. So that was very nice to see. I was proud to be in that room, being a Temple City and seeing that.
Well, thank you, Ed.
City.
It was a pleasure to serve as president that year, and then COVID came on, and so it was 2 more years of that presidency. So it was a long time, but Susan Rubio is just really a champion for that. And I think, we were very lucky to have her. She did some great things for the city of Temple City. She was always engaged, and I hope we can build that same relationship with our new senator. I've gotten to know her chief of staff very well, and she's excellent. But I really want to see if we can invite Sasha to come more, because we haven't seen her very much in our own city. And it's really nice to be able to have that same presence as we had with Susan. So if you want to drop a line and invite her to Temple City, I'm sure the more the merrier, we get on board with that. But it's really good to have those relationships. I think that's pretty much it. Tom, remind me in the December 2nd meeting, that you'll reach out to Peggy about the family possibly coming, or friends for the gentleman. Okay, and so with that, we are adjourned. Oops, did I miss something? Public comment. Do we have any public comment? No public comment. Close public comment, and now we're adjourned. Thank you.
All right. Thank